you're going to get an option, at least in a Windows environment, you're going to get an option to install various server roles.
Right.
A server role basically fine-tunes how that server is going to be used. Some of the common server roles that you'll see in Windows operating system are going to be file server, you got a print server. You might see a web server, that's another common one. Here's another one. This one's called a domain controller. And there's a bunch of other server roles too, but these are some of the high flyers. A file server is probably the easiest one to set up. The whole point of a file server is to act as a central storage area for files and documents for your whole network. So let's say, for example, you got a team. You got this HR team, right? HR department. They got all these files that they need, and it's maybe, let's say it's like 5 or 6 people in that HR department. They all have their little individual computers, but they're all part of the same team, and they have files that they need access to. 2 approaches to work in this. In a regular peer-to-peer network where everybody's computers are their own servers, you would have these files stored individually on all of those different systems. But what happens when this person makes an update and that person makes an update on the same day? Now we got 2 copies of the files and there's inconsistencies there. File servers solve that problem because it gives everybody a central place to save those documents and share them. This allows them to collaborate with each other. That way, when this person over here and this person over here need to work on that file, they're accessing the same file on the file server, and when they save it, everybody gets to see the changes. So that's why file servers are one of the more frequently used server roles on corporate networks, because usually in a corporation or a big company, even a small company, you got teams of people working together on things. So they need that as a collaboration tool. And again, that way it eliminates there being a bunch of different copies of the same document floating around out there, and then you can't determine who's got the latest version. So that's our file server. Print servers enable us to print. So we got that same document, right?
Right.
Now we need to send that to a printer. In some organizations, everybody has their own printer. And if it's a small company, that might not be a big deal. But if I'm a company with like hundreds or thousands of people, buying everybody an individual printer becomes super expensive. You know, even if I'm buying people, even if let's say I have 1,000 employees and I'm buying people printers at, you know, how much, like $100 a pop, that's what, 1,000 times 100, that's 10 grand. 10 grand in printers. And that's a cheap printer. Right. Most like company printers run way more expensive than $100.
Right.
I was just trying to make the math easy for myself because I'm a computer scientist, not a mathematician. As a way to eliminate all that extra money, what corporations or what we'll do on networks is we'll set up network attached printers. And if we have a bank of those network attached printers, we won't plug them into the network individually. We'll take a bank of printers and we'll connect them into a print server. That print server acts as a central management point for all of the printers. You probably see, like, if you ever gone to like a library and they had like maybe like 5 or 6 printers lined up against the back, and then maybe 20 computers scattered around the library. The reason they're able to have those 20 computers scattered around the library and then a bank of printers lined up way across on the other side of the library, but then when you print your document, it makes its way to one of those printers, is because all those printers are attached to a print server. The print jobs don't go directly to the printer. The print jobs go from your computer to the print server. The print server maintains what they call a queue or a line, which then it can use to manage which printer gets that job. So let's say printer 1 through 4, they're busy right now. Printer 5's not doing anything. If I had directly attached a computer to those printers and I went to print and my computer was attached to printer 1, guess what? I'd have to wait for my print job until all the other print jobs printer 1 was handling got handled. But if all those printers are attached to a print server, when I send my print job in, It goes to the print server. The print server is able to identify which printers aren't doing anything, and it says, oh, printers 1 through 4, they busy right now. I'm gonna send this print job to printer 5, and then it prints it out. So that server role allows advanced management of all your printing in your organization, and it makes it so you don't have to have a printer for everybody in the building. They all can share a group of printers. Remember I said you got 20 computers scattered around the library, but only 5 printers? Right. If we had direct connections, each one of those 20 printers would need their own individual computers. And that's a waste of money. Now those 20 printers can share those 20 computers can share those 5 printers, and the print server makes it easy to manage the print jobs so that nobody has to wait too long to get their printouts. Right. And that's a role that you can turn on inside of your server in the Windows operating system. Next is a web server. So if I'm either hosting internal or external websites, there's going to be extra software components that have to get installed on top of the base server operating system. When I activate that web server role, it gives me the ability to, allow my server to communicate over port 80 HTTP or port 443 HTTPS. It gives me tools like IIS, Internet Information Services, that allow for websites to be created and hosted. So I get a bunch of other features that get installed when I activate this web server, and then again, it lets you be able to create websites and host websites off of that server, either internally or externally. And then last but not least, this guy is really important. That's called a domain controller. In Windows speak, a domain represents your entire network. So we have a Microsoft domain, and our domain is passiononmd.org. That represents our entire network. When I add a computer to our network, it picks up it gets added to the passiononmd.org domain. And that domain acts as a management area. If that machine is under that domain, under my passiononmd.org domain, that means I have centralized management of it. I can make rules that can affect the whole domain or portions of the domain. And on this domain controller, we have a special database that gets stored that's going to hold all the information about the objects that get created in my domain, and it's called Active Directory. So Active Directory is a database, again, that stores information about everything that's on your domain or in your domain. All objects. Objects can include computers, it can include user accounts, printers, basically anything that you create in on your network gets a digital object that gets added to that Active Directory database. That's why this one is so important. The domain controller has the blueprint for your entire network laid out. And when you install the domain controller role on a server, it then adds in that database and all of the tools needed to manage that Active Directory database. So as a systems administrator, this is going to be a really important server for you to manage, because this is where you go not only to manage the server itself, but to manage all the other objects on your network. Right. There can be multiple domain controllers in your network, but only one domain controller can be in charge. All of the other domain controllers that you build will be replicas that'll report up to the primary domain controller. So that way, it's like you have a backup. The main domain controller has subordinates. If the main one goes down, the subordinates have a copy of Active Directory, so they can keep allowing the devices that connect into them to communicate till you get the main primary domain controller back up and running. Right. All right, so if you're gonna play around with server roles, the way I would start practicing is practice from the easiest server role to the most difficult. So start out and just figuring out how to install your base operating system. Maybe Windows 2016, 2019, you can install those in a virtual machine on a 60 or 120-day trial, so that you can get a feel for how to install it and how to get the base operating system laid down. After that, go ahead and turn on one of the server roles. Turn on a file server role. After you get that file server role set up, it'll enable you to create share drives. You can, if you connect your computer to your home network then, and it's got a file server role, you should be able to replicate something like this. Create a shared drive on your virtual machine, and then put a folder or a file inside of it, and then you should be able to go to another computer, map that shared drive, and access it. So once you got that figured out, then try creating a print server. Get that figured out, try to create a web server. And then finally, get down to the domain controller and try building your own whole domain.